The package arrived on a rainy October morning in 1981. Grace stood in her private study, looking at the manila envelope that had been placed on her desk by the palace secretary. The return address was from a production company in New York she didn't recognize. The label read, "For Princess Grace, personal and confidential." She had learned to be wary of unsolicited packages. Over the years, she had received countless scripts, offers, pleas from aspiring filmmakers who wanted her name attached to their projects. She always declined politely through her secretary. Princess Grace did not make movies. But something about this package felt different. Grace opened it carefully and found a screenplay inside. The title page read, "The Window," written by Eleanor Ashford. Attached to the script was a handwritten letter. "Your Highness," it began. "My name is Eleanor Ashford. I am 74 years old, and I am dying. I have perhaps 3 months left, according to my doctors. I am writing to you because I have spent the last year writing something that only you can understand. This script is not a job offer. I know you will never act again. This is simply a story I needed to tell, and I wanted you to read it before I die. Consider it a gift from one woman to another. With deepest respect, Eleanor." Grace sat down slowly, the letter trembling in her hands. She should put it away. She should have her secretary send a polite response and destroy the script unread. Opening herself to this kind of thing was dangerous. It only made everything harder. But Eleanor Ashford was dying. And she had written something specifically for Grace to read. Grace turned to the first page. Fade in. Int. Palace bedroom, night. A woman in her 50s stands at a window, looking out at a city she rules but does not belong to. She is Margaret, once a celebrated actress, now a queen who has forgotten how to be human. Grace's breath caught in her throat. She read on. The script was about a queen who had once been an actress. A woman who had traded her craft for a crown, who had spent decades performing the role of royalty while the artist inside her slowly died. The story followed Margaret over the course of a single week as she discovered an old script from a film she never made, and began to realize that she had buried herself so deeply in the role of queen that she no longer knew where the performance ended and her real self began. It was Grace's life, disguised as fiction. Grace read the entire script in one sitting, unable to stop. The rain drummed against the windows. The afternoon faded into evening. She read by lamplight, tears streaming down her face, as Eleanor Ashford's words stripped away every defense she had carefully constructed over 25 years. Eleanor understood. Somehow, this dying woman she had never met understood everything. The script ended with Margaret alone in her palace, holding the unfinished script from her past, making a choice. She could destroy it, bury the last evidence of who she used to be. Or she could finish it. Not as a film to be made, but as an act of remembrance. A way of telling herself that the actress she had been still mattered, even if no one else would ever know. The final stage direction read. Margaret sits at her desk. She picks up a pen. She begins to write. Fade out. Grace closed the script and sat in the darkness of her study, overwhelmed by emotions she couldn't name. Eleanor Ashford had given her a gift. Not a job offer. Not a plea for her return to acting. But something more precious. Recognition. Validation. The acknowledgement that what she had lost mattered. That the grief she carried was real and justified. Someone understood. Grace picked up the letter again and read it more carefully. Eleanor had included her address, a hospice facility in New York. She had also included a postscript. If you would like to write back, I would be honored. But if you prefer not to, I understand. Either way, thank you for the beauty you brought to the screen. You made me want to be a writer. I hope my words can repay that gift, even in some small way. Grace sat with the letter for a long time. Then she took out a piece of her personal stationery and began to write. Dear Eleanor, she wrote. Thank you for your script. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for understanding what I have never been able to say out loud. Your Margaret is me, and reading her story felt like finally being recognized after 25 years of invisibility. Grace paused, pen hovering over paper. How much should she reveal? How honest could she be? She decided to be completely honest. Eleanor was dying. She deserved the truth. I have spent most of my adult life performing the role of Princess Grace, Grace wrote. I do it well. I have perfected the smile, the gracious word, the elegant gesture. I am everything a princess should be. But somewhere along the way, I lost Grace Kelly. The woman who loved acting, who felt most alive when standing in front of a camera, who believed that art could transform both the artist and the audience. I miss her. I miss myself. And I don't know how to get her back. Your script showed me something I needed to see. Margaret chooses to finish writing the script from her past. Not to make the film, but to honor the artist she used to be. To acknowledge that her loss was real, even if no one else recognizes it. I don't know what my version of that choice looks like. But thank you for showing me that I have a choice at all. Grace signed the letter, sealed it in an envelope, and marked it for immediate posting. Then she sat back and looked at the script on her desk. The Window. A story about a woman looking out at a world she could never truly inhabit, trapped behind glass, performing a role she could never escape. It was perfect. It was devastating. It was true. 2 weeks later, Grace received a response from Eleanor's daughter. Eleanor had died 3 days after receiving Grace's letter. But she had read it, and her daughter wanted Grace to know that Eleanor's last words had been, "She understood. We understood each other." Grace held the daughter's letter and wept. She had lost someone she had never met but who had seen her more clearly than anyone in her actual life. In her grief, Grace made a decision. She would honor Eleanor's gift. She would finish The Window. Not as a screenplay to be produced. Not as a film to be made. But as a private act of creation, a way of keeping both Eleanor's memory and her own artistic spirit alive. Grace began working on the script in secret, late at night when the palace was quiet and she was alone with her thoughts. She wrote in the margins, adding scenes, deepening Margaret's character, exploring the emotions Eleanor had sketched but not fully developed. She was writing, yes, but she was also acting. In her mind, she performed every scene, every gesture, every moment of Margaret's journey. She became Margaret the way she had once become Lisa Carroll Fremont, Frances Stevens, Tracy Lord. She was acting again, even if only in the privacy of her own imagination. The work consumed her in a way nothing had for 25 years. She thought about the script during state dinners, planning scenes while smiling at diplomats. She rehearsed dialogue in her head during ribbon-cutting ceremonies. She refined Margaret's emotional arc while attending charity galas. Princess Grace performed her royal duties flawlessly. But Grace Kelly was writing. It took her 3 months to finish the expanded script. She filled Eleanor's original 90 pages with notes, additions, new scenes, deeper insights. The final version ran to 150 pages, a complete screenplay that would never be filmed, performed by an actress who existed only in Grace's imagination. When it was done, Grace sat in her study at 3 a.m, holding the finished script, feeling something she hadn't felt in decades. Pride. She had created something. Not as Princess Grace, patron of the arts, but as Grace Kelly, artist. The distinction mattered. Grace locked the script in her desk drawer, next to all the other fragments of her former life. But this was different. The photographs, the old scripts, the letters from Hitchcock, those were artifacts of a past she could never reclaim. This was new. This was hers. This was proof that Grace Kelly still existed somewhere inside the perfectly constructed facade of Princess Grace. In the months that followed, Grace found herself returning to the script again and again. She would take it out late at night and read through it, making tiny adjustments, perfecting scenes that would never be performed, creating something beautiful that no one else would ever see. It was her secret. Her rebellion. Her refusal to disappear completely. One night, Rainier found her in her study at 2 a.m, the script spread across her desk. "What are you working on?" he asked, curious but not demanding. Grace hesitated. She could lie. She could make up some excuse about charity work or correspondence. But she was tired of lying. "A screenplay," she said simply. "A woman wrote it for me before she died. I'm finishing it for her." Rainier picked up a few pages, skimmed them. "It's about a queen who used to be an actress." "Yes." He was quiet for a moment, reading. Then he set the pages down gently. It's good. You should consider producing it. The foundation could fund. No, Grace interrupted. It's not for production. It's just, for me. Rainier looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Confusion. Concern. Understanding. You miss it, he said finally. It wasn't a question. Grace met his eyes. Every day. Another silence. Then, I'm sorry. Grace felt tears burning behind her eyes. In 25 years of marriage, Rainier had never acknowledged her sacrifice. He had appreciated it, certainly, relied on it. But he had never named it, never recognized what it had cost her. I made my choice, Grace said quietly. I knew what I was giving up. Did you? Rainier asked. Did either of us really understand what it would mean? Grace didn't have an answer for that. Rainier gestured to the script. If working on this brings you some peace, then I'm glad you're doing it. You don't have to hide it from me. He kissed her forehead and left her alone with her work. Grace sat in the silence that followed, feeling something shift in her chest. It wasn't resolution. It wasn't healing. But it was acknowledgement. Rainier had seen her grief and named it. That was something. Grace returned to the script with renewed purpose. If she was going to honor Eleanor's gift, if she was going to keep Grace Kelly alive, she needed to finish this properly. She added a new final scene. Margaret, the queen who used to be an actress, stands at her window looking out at the city. She has just finished writing the script from her past. She knows she will never perform it, never see it filmed, never share it with anyone. But she has created something. She has remembered who she used to be. And in remembering, she has reclaimed some small part of herself. The final lines of dialogue. Margaret, to herself, holding the script. This is who I was. This is who I still am, somewhere beneath the crown and the performance and the years of forgetting. I am an artist. I am alive. And even if no one else ever knows it, I will remember. She places the script in a drawer, locks it away with her other secrets. Then she turns back to the window, to the city, to the role she will continue to play until she dies. But now there is a difference. She knows the performance is a performance. She knows there is someone real beneath it. And that knowing, however small, however private, is enough. Fade out. Grace read her final scene and knew it was complete. She had honored Eleanor's gift. She had finished the unfinished script. And in doing so, she had written her own truth. Princess Grace would continue to perform her duties, to smile for cameras, to embody grace and dignity and royal perfection. But Grace Kelly existed. In the privacy of her study, in the secret pages of a script no one else would ever read, she existed. And somehow, impossibly, that was enough. Grace locked the completed script in her desk drawer and went to bed. Tomorrow, she would wake up as Princess Grace again. But tonight, she was Grace Kelly, writer and actress and artist. And that made all the difference. The script became Grace's companion over the following months. She would take it out on difficult days, when the weight of her role felt particularly crushing, and read through it like a prayer book. Eleanor's words, mixed with her own additions, reminded her that she was more than just Princess Grace. She was an artist. Even if no one else knew it. Even if she could never share it with the world. In February of 1982, Grace received a letter from Eleanor's daughter. She had been going through her mother's papers and found a journal entry from the week before Eleanor died. I sent the script to Princess Grace, Eleanor had written. I don't know if she'll read it. I don't know if it will mean anything to her. But I had to try. I spent my whole life watching her films, studying her performances, learning from her craft. She taught me that acting wasn't about pretending, it was about revealing truth. If my script can help her remember that truth about herself, then my life as a writer will have meant something. Grace read the journal entry 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Eleanor had understood. Completely. The script hadn't been a fan letter or a plea for attention. It had been one artist reaching out to another, offering recognition and understanding across the distance of fame and circumstance. Grace wrote back to Eleanor's daughter, thanking her for sharing the journal entry. She also made a confession. She had finished the script. She had added scenes, deepened the character, completed Eleanor's vision. "Your mother gave me a gift I didn't know I needed," Grace wrote. "She reminded me that I am still an artist, even if I can never practice my art publicly." The work I did on her script was the most fulfilling creative experience I've had in 25 years. Please know that her final act of generosity changed my life. Eleanor's daughter wrote back with a request. Would Grace consider allowing the script to be published posthumously? Not under Grace's name, of course, under Eleanor's. But with an acknowledgement that it had been completed in collaboration with a friend who understood. Grace thought about it for weeks. Part of her wanted to say yes. The script deserved to exist beyond her locked drawer. Eleanor's vision deserved to be shared with the world. But publishing it would raise questions. Who was this mysterious collaborator? Why had Eleanor sent the script to Princess Grace? The media would speculate, investigate, potentially uncover the truth. And Grace couldn't risk that. Couldn't risk exposing her grief, her longing, her secret creative life to public scrutiny and judgment. So she declined, gently but firmly. The script would remain private. A secret shared between two artists, one living and one dead, both of them understanding what it meant to create in silence. Eleanor's daughter respected her decision. Grace locked the script back in her drawer and tried to return to her normal life. But something had fundamentally changed. The act of finishing the script, of creating something new, had awakened something in her that refused to go back to sleep. Grace started writing more. Nothing formal, nothing structured. Just fragments. Thoughts. Observations. Character sketches. Dialogue that would never be spoken. She wrote about a woman trapped in a beautiful cage. A woman who smiled for cameras while dying inside. A woman who had made an irreversible choice and spent the rest of her life living with the consequences. She wrote about herself. The writing became a lifeline. A way to process her grief, to maintain some connection to her artistic identity, to resist complete erasure. Princess Grace attended state functions and charity events. But Grace Kelly wrote. In May of 1982, Grace was scheduled to attend a film festival in Monaco. It was a minor event, nothing like Cannes, but it featured retrospectives of several classic Hollywood actresses, including Grace Kelly. The organizers wanted her to introduce a screening of Rear Window. Just a few words of welcome, perhaps a brief reflection on working with Hitchcock. Grace's first instinct was to decline. She always declined these kinds of requests. Princess Grace did not discuss her acting career publicly. It was too painful. Too complicated. But something made her reconsider. Maybe it was Eleanor's script. Maybe it was the writing she had been doing. Maybe it was simply the realization that she was 52 years old and running out of time to honor the artist she had been. Grace agreed to do the introduction. The night of the screening, she stood backstage at Monaco's small cinema, her heart pounding the way it used to pound before going on camera. She wore a simple black dress, elegant but understated. She had written her remarks by hand, refusing to let anyone else craft her words. When her introduction was announced, Grace walked onto the small stage and looked out at the audience. Film enthusiasts. Students. People who loved cinema and wanted to learn from the masters. People who saw her as Grace Kelly, actress. Not Princess Grace, royal figure. It was intoxicating. "Good evening," Grace began, her voice steady. "Thank you for being here tonight to watch Rear Window, a film that changed my life in ways I didn't fully understand at the time." She paused, gathering courage. "Alfred Hitchcock once told me that the camera sees everything. It sees through pretense and artifice straight to the truth beneath. As an actress, my job was to let the camera see that truth, even when it was uncomfortable or revealing or difficult." Grace looked down at her notes, then decided to speak from her heart instead. "I spent 7 years working in film. It was the most challenging, fulfilling, terrifying work I've ever done. Every role demanded something different from me. Every director pushed me to dig deeper, to be braver, to reveal more. When I left Hollywood in 1956, I believed I was moving toward something greater. A real-life fairy tale. A chance to make a difference in ways that went beyond entertainment. Her voice wavered slightly, but she continued. I've spent 26 years trying to convince myself that was true. That being a princess is more important than being an actress. That serving Monaco matters more than creating art. The audience was completely silent. But standing here tonight, about to watch myself in one of Hitchcock's masterpieces, I realized something. Both things mattered. Both things were real. And pretending that one was more valuable than the other was a lie I told myself to make the sacrifice bearable. Grace's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't stop. I was an actress. I am an actress. I will always be an actress, even if I never stand in front of a camera again. That identity doesn't disappear just because I stopped practicing the craft. It's part of who I am. So tonight, when you watch Rear Window, you're not watching Princess Grace of Monaco. You're watching Grace Kelly, actress. Please remember her. Because I'm trying very hard not to forget. The applause that followed was overwhelming. Grace stood on the small stage, tears streaming down her face, and felt something break open inside her chest. She had told the truth. Again. Just like at the AFI ceremony, she had spoken honestly about her loss, her grief, her ongoing struggle with identity. And the world hadn't ended. Grace watched Rear Window from the back of the theater, seeing her younger self on screen. She remembered every moment of filming that movie. The heat of the soundstage. Hitchcock's quiet direction. Jimmy Stewart's kindness. The thrill of bringing Lisa Carol Fremont to life. She had been so young. So alive. So completely herself. And now, at 52, sitting in a darkened theater in Monaco, Grace Kelly was still there. Buried beneath years of protocol and performance, but still there. Still alive. Still fighting to exist. After the screening ended, Grace returned to the palace and went straight to her study. She took out the script, Eleanor's gift, her collaboration, their shared truth, and added one more scene. A woman stands on a stage, introducing a film from her past. She tells the truth about her sacrifice, her grief, her ongoing struggle with identity. The audience listens. They understand. And for a moment, she is seen. Really seen. Not as a princess. Not as an icon. But as a human being who made a difficult choice and has been living with the consequences ever since. It's not redemption. It's not resolution. But it's acknowledgement. And that's enough. Grace closed the script and locked it away for the final time. Tomorrow, she would wake up as Princess Grace again. But tonight, she was Grace Kelly. Artist. Writer. Actress. Alive.